The Robinson family got lost in space.
Yeah, the series was set in the far future, 1997.
1997.
Do you have a name?
My name's Will Robinson, sir. And I'm not a toy, I'm a boy.
Oh, nonsense, nonsense.
Have you ever gone back to watch Lost in Space expecting a simple dose of nostalgic science fiction, only to realize something feels strangely different? Beneath the colorful aliens, quirky adventures, and the robots' unforgettable warnings lies a production filled with unexpected twists, backstage rivalries, creative gambles, and stories that never made it to the screen. While millions remember the series as one of television's most beloved classics, very few know just how close it came to becoming an entirely different show. Some of its biggest stars almost never appeared. One famous character wasn't even part of the original plan, and behind the scenes, cast members were constantly adapting to surprising challenges that shaped the series in ways viewers never imagined. Once you hear these forgotten stories, you'll never look at Lost in Space the same way again. One of the biggest surprises involves the man who eventually became the face of the entire series. Today, it's almost impossible to imagine Lost in Space without Dr. Zachary Smith. His dramatic outbursts, endless selfish schemes, and hilarious cowardice became the heart of the show. But originally, he wasn't supposed to stick around at all. When the earliest version of the series was created, the Robinson family's mission simply went wrong because of circumstances beyond their control. There was no manipulative saboteur traveling alongside them. Producers later decided the story needed a human source of conflict, so Dr. Smith was introduced as a one-dimensional villain whose purpose was simply to sabotage the mission before disappearing from the story. Everything changed the moment Jonathan Harris stepped into the role. Instead of portraying Smith as a straightforward criminal, Harris filled every scene with exaggerated expressions, razor-sharp sarcasm, theatrical panic, and perfectly timed comedy. Rather than making viewers hate the character, he somehow convinced them to enjoy watching him fail. His performance became so entertaining that producers quickly realized audiences weren't tuning in despite Dr. Smith. They were tuning in because of him. As the ratings continued, the writers slowly reshaped the entire series around his personality. Adventure gradually gave way to comedy, and before long Dr. Smith had become the show's biggest attraction. It remains one of television's most remarkable examples of an actor completely transforming a character beyond what the creators originally intended. Harris's confidence extended far beyond his acting. Behind the scenes, he negotiated something almost unheard of for television at the time. Instead of accepting standard cast billing, he requested to be credited as a special guest star in every episode. Normally, that title belonged to actors making occasional appearances, not someone featured every single week. But Harris believed the unique credit would make his role appear more prestigious and unforgettable. Surprisingly, the producers agreed. Week after week, audiences saw Jonathan Harris introduced differently from the rest of the cast, reinforcing the idea that Dr. Smith occupied a special place within the series. It wasn't just clever marketing. It perfectly reflected Smith's oversized ego, almost making the opening credits feel like part of the character's performance. Ironically, another pair of characters viewers now consider inseparable from the show nearly never existed. The version of Lost in Space first presented to television executives looked dramatically different. In the original pilot, neither Dr. Smith nor the robot appeared at all. Instead, the Robinson family and Major Don West embarked on their historic mission without any internal conflict. Their journey went off course because of a natural disaster rather than sabotage. The tone was noticeably darker and far more serious. It resembled a traditional science fiction drama centered on survival instead of humor. Network executives weren't convinced. They felt the series needed stronger personalities, more excitement, and characters that younger audiences could instantly remember. Their solution completely reshaped television history. Dr. Smith was added to create constant conflict, while the robot brought futuristic charm and unforgettable catchphrases. Those two last-minute additions didn't simply improve the show, they became its identity. Without them, Lost in Space might have disappeared after a single season and faded into television history. Speaking of the robot, bringing him to life proved far more difficult than audiences ever realized. To viewers, He appeared as an advanced mechanical companion capable of warning the Robinson family whenever danger approached. Behind the camera, however, creating that illusion required enormous effort. The robot costume reportedly cost around $70,000 to build, an astonishing amount for a television production during the 1960s. Constructed from fiberglass and heavy metal components, it weighed nearly 200 pounds. Inside that enormous shell stood stunt performer Bob May. Every movement had to be carefully rehearsed because visibility inside the suit was extremely limited. Ventilation was poor, temperatures became unbearable under studio lights, and even walking demanded incredible concentration. As challenging as moving inside the robot already was, Bob May had another hidden responsibility. The blinking lights across the robot's chest weren't controlled remotely by technicians. Instead, May secretly activated them himself by pressing a concealed switch with his own head while remaining perfectly in character. Imagine memorizing dialogue, performing physical movements, staying balanced inside 200 pounds of fiberglass, and timing flashing lights, all simultaneously. Meanwhile, the robot's unforgettable voice came from Dick Tufeld, who recorded every line separately after filming. His commanding delivery gave the machine personality, authority, and warmth despite never appearing on screen himself. Tufeld's contribution didn't end there. His familiar voice also narrated the series, guiding viewers into every adventure and helping connect episodes that often shifted wildly between serious science fiction and outright fantasy. Without showing his face even once, Tufeld became one of the defining voices of classic television. Another fascinating production decision involved something viewers probably never noticed sitting quietly inside the Jupiter 2. Unlike many science fiction shows of its era, Lost in Space didn't rely entirely on fake equipment. Irwin Allen wanted the spacecraft to feel believable, so actual Burroughs B-205 computer systems were installed throughout parts of the set. These weren't cardboard props painted silver. They were genuine machines originally designed for government agencies and scientific institutions. Their blinking lights, switches, and futuristic appearance added authenticity that simple mock-ups couldn't match. Most viewers had no idea they were looking at real technology instead of Hollywood imagination. Even though the computers weren't fully operational during filming, they helped convince audiences that the Robinson family truly occupied one of the most advanced spacecraft ever built for television. Allen understood that believable environments made even the wildest stories easier to accept. It was this obsessive attention to detail that helped Lost in Space stand apart from many of its competitors, even when episodes ventured into increasingly bizarre territory. But despite those expensive sets and impressive technology, the production constantly searched for creative ways to save money. In fact, some of the futuristic devices audiences admired weren't new inventions at all. The same scanners, control panels, and mysterious alien equipment quietly appeared again and again throughout the series, disguised with fresh paint, different lighting, or slight rearrangements. Most viewers never noticed. The illusion worked so well that a single prop could become 3 completely different pieces of advanced alien technology without anyone questioning it. It was a clever reminder that television magic often depended less on unlimited budgets and more on imagination. And surprisingly, the biggest behind-the-scenes disaster wasn't caused by expensive equipment or complicated special effects. It came from an unexpected 4-legged guest that nearly stole the entire production. That unbelievable story would eventually become part of one of the strangest episodes in television history. The episode in question would later become infamous among fans for all the wrong reasons. By the 3rd season, Lost in Space had embraced a much lighter, stranger style, but nothing captured that shift better than the Great Vegetable Rebellion. Instead of battling terrifying creatures or exploring mysterious planets, the Robinson family found themselves facing Tybo, a giant talking carrot capable of turning humans into vegetables. Even by the show's increasingly playful standards, the story pushed the limits of imagination. Behind the scenes, the production became just as chaotic as the script itself. The crew originally planned to include a live llama as part of the episode, hoping it would add another layer of bizarre comedy. Unfortunately, the animal had other ideas. It repeatedly spat at actors, crew members, and equipment whenever cameras rolled. After several frustrating attempts, the filmmakers abandoned the idea completely and removed the llama from the production. The strange combination of a talking carrot, disappearing llama, and increasingly outrageous storytelling turned the episode into one of the most talked-about chapters in the series. Some longtime fans still point to it as the moment the show drifted furthest from its original vision. Ironically, it aired only shortly before the series came to an end, making it a fitting symbol of just how dramatically Lost in Space had evolved. While the adventures on screen grew stranger, something much sweeter was quietly happening behind the cameras. Billy Mumy, who played young Will Robinson, and Angela Cartwright, who portrayed his television sister Penny, spent years growing up together on set. Their friendship naturally deepened as they got older, eventually becoming a real-life romance once they reached their teenage years. Very few viewers knew that the siblings they watched every week were actually dating away from the cameras. The relationship lasted for years, and they even became engaged for a short time before eventually deciding to remain friends instead. Although their romance didn't last forever, their lifelong friendship did. Looking back, it gives many of their scenes together an extra layer of warmth that audiences never realized was genuine. Another actor whose experience on the series wasn't quite as happy was Guy Williams. Already famous for portraying Zorro, Williams expected Lost in Space to remain a serious family adventure. During the first season, that's exactly what he believed he had signed up for. John Robinson served as the calm, intelligent leader of the family, facing believable dangers across the universe. Then everything changed. As Dr. Smith became increasingly popular, more stories focused on comedy instead of survival. The father who had once been the emotional center of the show gradually found himself standing in the background while Smith and the robot dominated episode after episode. For a classically trained actor like Williams, the creative shift became increasingly disappointing. Although he remained professional throughout the series, he reportedly struggled with the direction it had taken. After Lost in Space ended, he quietly stepped away from Hollywood and eventually settled in Argentina, where he enjoyed a far more private life. Ironically, his popularity there continued to grow thanks to endless reruns of Zorro, proving that sometimes an actor's greatest success comes long after leaving the spotlight. One fascinating piece of television history involves another legendary science fiction franchise. During the early 1960s, networks were searching for ambitious science fiction programming, and more than one groundbreaking series was competing for attention. At one point, executives had to decide which projects deserved their support. Lost in Space impressed decision-makers with its family-friendly adventure and broad appeal, earning an early vote of confidence. Meanwhile, another ambitious science fiction concept struggled to find its footing before eventually landing elsewhere. That series was Star Trek. History would treat both shows very differently. Lost in Space enjoyed strong early ratings and quickly became a household name, while Star Trek initially struggled before eventually becoming one of the most influential franchises ever created. Looking back, it's remarkable that two television legends began their journeys during the same era while taking completely different paths toward immortality. Despite often being viewed as competitors, the productions occasionally shared surprising connections. Television budgets during the 1960s were limited, and studios frequently reused materials whenever possible. Makeup departments sometimes recycled prosthetics, costumes, and design elements between productions. Eagle-eyed fans have noticed similarities between certain alien appearances in Lost in Space and creatures seen in Star Trek, illustrating how creative television artists stretched every available resource to build entire galaxies on relatively modest budgets. Even the Robinson family's incredible spacecraft carried its own fascinating story. Within the fictional universe, the Jupiter 2 represented one of humanity's greatest technological achievements, reportedly costing an astonishing $30 billion to construct. For audiences in the 1960s, that number sounded almost unimaginable, emphasizing just how important the mission truly was. Building the television set itself obviously required nowhere near that amount, but it still represented one of the production's largest investments. Every flashing light, futuristic console, rotating instrument, and metallic wall panel helped convince viewers they were aboard a sophisticated interstellar vessel. That commitment extended beyond the sets and props into the show's costumes as well. The sleek silver uniforms, colorful alien outfits, and futuristic wardrobe became defining visual elements of the series. Costume designer Paul Zastupnovich created a distinctive style that blended optimism with imagination, helping establish the unmistakable look audiences still associate with 1960s science fiction. His work received industry recognition and demonstrated that television costume design could be just as creative as anything seen in major motion pictures. The influence of Lost in Space didn't end when production wrapped. Billy Mumy eventually returned to science fiction decades later with an appearance on Star Trek: Deep Space Nine. For longtime fans, seeing the former Will Robinson step into another legendary universe felt like science fiction history coming full circle. Instead of playing the adventurous child everyone remembered, Mumy delivered a mature performance that showed just how much he had grown as an actor. The show's inspiration reached even further back than many people realize. Although countless viewers assumed Lost in Space was a completely original concept, its roots stretch through generations of storytelling. The series drew inspiration from Space Family Robinson, which itself borrowed ideas from the classic adventure novel The Swiss Family Robinson. Rather than surviving on a deserted island, the Robinson family now faced the unknown across distant planets. But the central idea remained unchanged: a family relying on courage, intelligence, and teamwork while isolated from civilization. Years later, producer Irwin Allen returned to those original literary roots by creating a more traditional adaptation of The Swiss Family Robinson, proving his fascination with stories about ordinary families surviving extraordinary situations had never faded. And then there's perhaps the most remarkable connection of all. Long before becoming the composer behind Star Wars, Jaws, Indiana Jones, Superman, and countless other cinematic masterpieces, a young musician named John Williams accepted the challenge of scoring Lost in Space. At the time, few could have predicted that this rising composer would one day become one of the most celebrated names in film history. Instead of relying on simple electronic sounds that many science fiction programs favored, Williams approached the series with sweeping orchestral music that made every adventure feel larger than life. His compositions gave emotional weight to scenes that might otherwise have felt playful or absurd, adding a cinematic quality rarely heard on television during that era. Even after decades, the theme remains instantly recognizable, serving as an early glimpse of the musical genius that would soon transform Hollywood forever. Looking back today, Lost in Space wasn't simply another science fiction series from the 1960s. It was a remarkable blend of ambition, creativity, improvisation, and unexpected accidents. It introduced unforgettable characters that almost never existed, launched careers that would shape entertainment history, survived constant budget limitations through sheer ingenuity, and proved that sometimes television's greatest moments happen completely by accident. Behind every blinking console, every alien encounter, and every dramatic warning from the robot lies a story just as fascinating as the adventures themselves. That's why, decades after its final episode aired, Lost in Space continues to capture the imagination of old fans and new audiences alike. Its legacy isn't built only on nostalgia. It's built on the extraordinary stories hidden behind the camera, waiting to be rediscovered by anyone willing to look a little deeper. So now it's your turn. Which behind-the-scenes revelation surprised you the most? Were you shocked that Dr. Smith almost disappeared after a single storyline? Or did the out-of-control llama steal the show for you? Share your favorite fact in the comments below. And if you enjoy uncovering the hidden stories behind television's greatest classics, don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications. There are plenty more forgotten secrets from Hollywood's golden age waiting to be uncovered, and you won't want to miss what's coming next.